Let's go ahead and begin. Hi, everyone. As most of you should know, you're my friends. I'm Toya, Bible scholar, administrator, life coach, and this is my sister. I'll let her introduce herself. But we're just going to have a very quick chat about some of the things that have been revealed to us, and also some dreams, and also some experiences that we've had in church or in ministries or in ministerial like environments. So, Tiff, go ahead.
Hi. My introduction is not as elaborate. I'm Tiffany. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and uh, I've been on this journey with God for a while, and I've had a lot of experiences in and out of the church, and some things I've learned over the years, and I am very excited to be sharing it with you today.
Awesome. Thank you. So, we are going to try to come live more often and maybe even do some YouTube stuff. So stay tuned. We really just want to have really candid conversations, about the earth, the world, God, motherhood, not being a mother or not being interested in the whole marriage and family life thing. We'll just talk about it all, sexuality, everything. So that's the idea going forward. So join us on this journey of vulnerability, and we want you to add your voice. So feel free to make yourself known in the comments, and ask questions, make comments, join us in this dialogue. And if any of you ever want to actually join us in this dialogue and join the Zoom for live content, also just shoot us a direct message and we'll get that set up. So today we're going to talk about quite a few things. We're going to talk about energy, but we're also going to talk about its connection to witchcraft, to healing, deliverance, and, talk a little bit about a dream, which will bring in grace or gracelessness. I should be more specific with that, but yeah. So I just want to really emphasize that this term energy is kind of, really bastardized by the body of Christ, or it is just purely scientific. But the truth of the matter is energy is it's a concept that extends beyond science. And of course it is profuse in science because everything functions off of some kind of energetic force. But this is also true of the spirit realm, and you can actually see energy spiritually. And a lot of people are afraid to talk about this stuff when it comes to the church or the body of Christ because it's become very much a buzzword for the New Age movement. And so the moment people mention it, they're like, oh, witchcraft. So we want to have the very candid conversation, and we want to talk about the things that people are afraid to talk about. And so I'll just, start off a bit. One of the things that's really important for us to notice or to acknowledge is energy is like a currency in the earth. And if we can understand energy as it works in the earth and as it is actualized in, or as it's represented in the spirit, then we get closer to understanding what grace looks like, because grace is like a currency in the heavens or in the spirit. So grace is much bigger than God's unmerited favor. It's much bigger than that. It is very much like a currency, or like it's probably one of the closest things we can get to when it comes to thinking about energy from an earthly standpoint. So um, I just think this conversation is just so well needed, and I'm so happy my sister is here to talk to us about it, or talk with me to you guys about it. So I've seen many things, especially, outside of church, but definitely within churches. And one of the things that have always been really important to me when it comes to, understanding what is happening around me is, just having a rationale for why people are doing the things that they're doing in church. So when I was younger, I would always be like, why is that person running? Like, what is happening here? And what that resulted in, this just very candid question to God. It's like, show me what's happening here. And that's when I started seeing various energies associated with people, associated with items, associated with entities, and associated with some of these larger buzz concepts that people talk about: healing, deliverance, witchcraft, all of that kind of stuff really functions really at its base on this kind of energetic kind of space, or in this energetic kind of space. So I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting that was for women, and it was a very powerful women meeting where women were just being really vulnerable about some of the things they had gone through in life, in ways that God had intervened and brought healing. And what I saw in people's moments of vulnerability is essentially people pushing their energy unconsciously into the ground. The ground acted as this medium and as this space for the transference of that energy. And the energy came, went into the ground and branched out like a neuron. So if you guys just look up neuron on, or how does a neuron look, neuron, in science, then you'll kind of see um what it looks like. It's essentially, and it's a nerve cell, and it kind of looks like, if you had to think about a small body connect with many legs that kind of branch out. If you
Like a
think
root
about the
system.
roots of a tree, that's what it looked like. So this energy would go into the ground, and it would look like the roots of a tree, and branch out to all these other people who were in the room, and people could pick up on that healing energy. And when I looked around, I could actually see like how people were responding to that energy that had gone their way, just from the vulnerability of a few women in the room. It was very, very powerful, but you can actually see people's responses, you know, whether it was a response in by crying out, or by in tears, or by them eventually standing up and giving their testimony. But it was a very powerful moment. It was one of, no, not one of my first experiences with energy, but definitely a lasting one. But it was a really important lesson, because we often um ignore or misunderstand the earth's partnership with us and God. And I was able to learn from that experience that the earth acts as a partner, not just with God, but with humans. It is really a way, or a conduit, for many of the energies that we ourselves take in and release. And the truth of the matter is we are constantly releasing energy and constantly taking in energy. You think about this from a scientific standpoint, like you got to eat calories, right? If you're going to be an avid gym head, because you're expending calories, and calories, energy, right? So you have to give your body energy in order to release energy. The same kind of thing happens in the spirit. It's kind of how we exist as human beings, and even as spirit beings, this constant give and take, this constant exchange of energy. But this is not just true of those really amazing things like healing and deliverance, and even when you think about the transference of information, and the transference of that, people use this term downloads, that in itself is also an energetic encounter. When we talk about the presence of God and feeling the presence of God, experiencing, encountering the presence of God, that's an energetic thing. Even our experience with our emotions, energetic experience, it's an energetic relation. Um, and so, yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about this, and there is so much more that I could say about that, even when it comes to new age terms like grounding. Grounding is it's not a spiritual practice that is innately witchy or witchcraft. It is a process, or spiritual process and activity that should and naturally goes on with human beings. And I'll give a quick example before I let my sister chime in. um I am very spiritually sensitive, and I get overwhelmed or overstimulated really, really quickly. And when I am in worship like spaces, these are very energized spaces. Like you're talking about, people using these terms like shifting the atmosphere, charging the atmosphere. It's because worship is one of those spaces that creates a really heightened, energized space. Um, and worship in whether it's to God or to anyone, it creates a really charged space. Those spaces get really overwhelming for me, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. One of the ways that God taught me, I didn't even know this was called grounding. God taught me this while I was in church, was to kind of stabilize myself in that space by almost seeing like my personhood dig down into the earth like the roots of a tree. And that really helped stabilize my emotions and help me to be present in this space and to still be present wherever God wanted me to be present when it came to seeing other things that were happening. Super duper important. Sounds new agey, but it is not. It was a God encounter, it was a God teaching. And we really have to be a little bit more brave when it comes to spirit and spirituality and what that looks like, because it's not gonna the way that we've been taught it looks like will put you in a box, keep you in a box, and will hinder your ability to really encounter yourself and encounter God. So yeah, tip.
Um, I was getting a lot of downloads while you were talking. um, it's kind of my brain always goes to scripture because that's just how God introduced himself to me when I was a youth. He spoke to me through scripture. And that's how I heard his voice before I actually heard his audible voice. And while you were talking, there's so many references of us being trees of righteousness, or us being trees, or being rooted and grounded in the truth. And there's all of these different words that would describe that what you said is facts. It's just I believe that the kingdom of darkness has hijacked so many things that everybody thinks that because it got stolen and the other side is using it, that when a believer is using it, it's immediately witchcraft. But that's really not the case. It's not the case at all. It's neither good nor bad. I think it's more so the your heart posture towards those things. Like, is it going to God? Is it going to, what is the heart intent? Like, all those things have to be considered, you know. And also when it comes towards a relationship with God, it's never going to be this boxed in thing. We know God through this way, but we don't usually stay that way. As you remain open, to the Father and how he interacts with us, it usually takes us to some very scary places, and I gotta say scary because it was scary for me. I remember my first time because I'm a prayer warrior. I've had the love of prayer since I was young, and I noticed that when I pray, I go someplace and I feel it. Like I literally feel myself going someplace. And when you first experience that, it's scary, but you feel it. It is an energy that you feel. Even your environment changes. Like prayer charges the atmosphere, just like what the world use as crystals. Oh, we have to charge our crystals. They're not saying things that is false, and they're not using something that came from an enemy, because the enemy is not a creator or enemy. He steals, he kills, he destroys. Come on, church. So he stole what already existed. Well, who created it? God. So when we start to break down those things and kind of get rid of all the religious shenanigans, then we can experience God in a deeper way. We were just having this talk the other day. Me and my sister I've been coming into this place with God where is detached from the church. You know, I love the church. I love my brothers and my sisters. I love fellowship, but it's just this thing that surrounds church. Even unbelievers or people that are curious about God don't even want to come near the church. They prefer to have a one-on-one with a believer than to go into a space where it's a lot of control, it's a lot of um deception, it's a lot of falsehood, and it's just a lot of things that's connected to it, and it's a nasty taste, and it can be a nasty taste in your mouth, and not only to me but to others. These are exchanges I've had with people on the outside too. And God put me out of the church when I'm in California right now, and He put me out of the church for a little bit. Like, He put me out of it so I can see, because while you're in it, you're blinded. You're like, you're going through the motions. And I noticed that I was going through the motions, and even my pursuit of Him, even my prayer life, even everything. Oh, I'm on a prayer ministry. Oh, I gotta pray at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everything becomes this habit, and you just kind of just go with the flow. That's just kind of like what religion does. You like do what you're used to doing. We were born and raised in the church, so it's very easy to get into that habit. But the Lord pulled me out of it so I can see. And I've been exposed to different ministries where I sensed different things. um God had to pull me out of it in order for me to really see what's going on, what the good and the bad, of what's going on in modern day church. And I was recently a part of a ministry where there's been times where I've been in a place of worship where I would automatically take my shoes off because I know that the Lord is there. It's something about when I feel the Father show up, I immediately take off my shoes. I never got that from anybody. I'm not trying to be religious and be like Moses. Not Moses. Yeah, Moses. Moses, right? Hold on. Let me
Yeah,
see.
Moses.
Yeah, Moses. Yeah, I had to think about it. I'm not having a Genesis moment. I literally, that's just the first thing that I would think in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, the Father is here. And I go into this place of reverence and I just take my shoes off. And I was a part of this ministry where when I would feel the Father come in, I would take my shoes off. Well, I've never had a situation like this, but it kind of lines up with what Toya said about energy, where I was in this space where as soon as I felt the Father show up, I took my shoes off and I felt this energy come in through my feet. It literally felt like the ground was shaking, but not shaking like an earthquake. It was just like, I don't know, like an electrical impulse. And I felt it enter my body. And I felt it just kind of went in and just spread out to the point that I believe it was like my body internalized it, and then it went out and it spread towards those around me, because I know I'm not the only one that felt it, because it's weird how connected we are and how the spirit works. But I've never experienced that before. I've felt the presence of God before in different ways, but I've never had an exchange where I took off my shoes and I felt it through my feet, and I felt it go through my body and go to people around me. So that's when I experienced that, I'm like, something's happening here. I've never experienced that before, and I started asking God questions. Did He answer me at that time? No, He didn't answer me. And I was a part of this ministry. It kept on happening, and I kept on taking off my shoes, and I kept on experiencing it, and I was just loving it. Well, it got to a point, a point where the Lord told me to stop. But before we get there, it was a period of time. Be careful. It was a period of time where um I didn't feel the presence of God, but it became a habit for me. So I immediately, during worship, I immediately took off my shoes. I didn't listen to the Father. When I feel the Father's presence, I usually take my shoes off. This time I didn't do it. I did it out of habit. I took my shoes off during worship, and the energy wasn't the same. It put it like this: the energy that came through me was fear. Like, I immediately felt fear. I was paranoid. I was looking around. I was thinking that something bad was going to happen. I was thinking that the ground was going to like shake and we were going to cave into the ground. I was thinking that the sky was going to open up. It was going to burn the place with fire. Like, I was afraid. Like, I felt fear. I'm like, what is this? what is this? So I was so scared. I put my shoes back on and I'm like, I'm all acting cool because I'm in church. This is church. Everybody's worshiping, got their hands up. Nobody else seemed to notice this. I'm like the only one. I think I mean, it was a lot of people. This was a really big ministry, a really big known ministry here in California. And I was like, I don't like how this feels. I put my shoes back on and I just started to have a little dialogue with the father. And he let me know that he didn't show up that day. He made it very clear that he wasn't in that place that day. And that's why I installed those things. And at that point, I started to be more guarded in that place until he pulled me out of that ministry, which ended up being the end result. I no longer attend that ministry because there was a shift, there was a change, and I'm not one to judge. I'm not God, so I'm not gonna say what went wrong or whatever. I just know that God made it clear that He wasn't there anymore. So I dipped because I want to be where my father is. And I've encountered some people where they're like, you have to bring God into a place. You have to do this. But that's not how it works in every situation. Every situation is different. And you have to be really sensitive and you have to really be open to what God is saying. He may speak to you or do something that is so different than what you're used to. He may speak to you in a way that's different. He may allow you to experience things that are different. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be willing to let it go and be like, you know what, God, I trust you. And I've just been on this journey where I've been experiencing different energies. Like I didn't even get to talk to Soya about this yesterday, but yesterday I went to my job. I had to go to another site, but it's literally within the same area. And when I was walking into the building, it literally felt like I went through a portal. It literally felt like it everything was different. And I felt it immediately. I've never sensed that before. And it's because I'm more open to God telling me things, to revealing things to me, the things that I can't see that's happening around me all around. So I can't, you know, judge someone and say, hey, that's witchcraft. I can no longer do that anymore because I'm experiencing these things in real time. And the Father is breaking it down bit by bit about how He works and how things work. And it's all connected to a spirit source, you know? Um, and I'm just I'm I'm excited but it's still scary, like touching things and feeling them, like touching things and knowing how a person felt by touching that thing. Like I touched something that somebody had thrown away and I felt anger come from it. How did I feel that? you know it's because there's more here, and I believe that it's a deeper dive into this, into discernment. I don't think discernment is like, oh, I taste this, oh, I feel this, oh, this is good or bad. I honestly believe that it's being able to sense things and have the knowledge of that thing. And it's like it's levels to it, because I've never touched anything and felt anything in my early walk with the Father, nor did I do it when I was actually serving in the ministry. Like I was preaching and teaching and evangelizing and serving in these places, and I still never experienced this, like serving in the church for years and years and years, going through these different things, being obedient to the Father, and never experienced these things. So now I'm in this space where I'm sensing things, I'm realizing things that God is in and God isn't in. I'm realizing things that it's a middle area where it could go left or right based off of how I internalize it, you know because sometimes we can be the ones that make it negative, based off of where we are, kind of like waking up on the wrong side of the bed. Who told you that what you're feeling is you? What if what you're feeling is your neighbor? What if what you're sensing is your children? What if what you're sensing is your husband or your wife laying next to you? Why do we automatically feel these things and take ownership of it and then
Yeah.
claim it's good, bad, or indifferent? Like, who are we to say that?
Yeah, that happens all the time. And I've been saying this for so many years. Like living in an apartment, it's for the birds.
Mm.
It really is.
Girl.
The things that go through your mind, and you don't think of these things. The
Nope.
things you feel and you sense, and this doesn't belong to you. Like, but you're right. A lot of times we take ownership of things that don't belong to us, especially pain, sickness, disease, and then we speak these things out of our mouths. We utter word curses, and some of this stuff don't even, it's not really truly attached to us. It's attached to someone who was attached to us, or it's attached to someone who we share walls with. But further, um I just want to kind of acknowledge in so many ways that when my sister told me this narrative of or about her experience of what happened in this church, one of the things that was really super duper clear to me is what my sister was most likely experiencing comes from this consciousness of what energy can do. So when I first started this live, I talked about how we are energetic beings, and how I had this vision of healing and how healing works, or how it often works, healing and deliverance. We have this energy through moments of prayer, worship, moments of vulnerability and transparency, even testifying or sharing a narrative, encouraging someone. We as energetic forces, we push our energies into the ground unconsciously. That energy branches out like the roots of a tree, and then people can pick up on that energy. So you look around and you see a church going crazy, or you're in a women's brunch and you see people just weeping and overwhelmed and things of that nature. It's often because people are sharing their energy, sharing with the ground as a medium,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I think was happening in the church you were at. I think what was happening is your leader was conscious of, and was more than conscious, knew how to work energy. And I think what was happening is, in these moments of great vulnerability, you know people were in this space of worship and transparency. They were unconsciously pushing their energies into the ground, and this person knew how to utilize that energy, essentially siphoning people. So what you felt in exchange was not healing, it was not deliverance, it was not the spirit of God, it was not freeing, it was fear
Mm.
filled, it was, demonic. This is witchcraft. And it's
Mm.
not just playing with energy illegally, it's also those moments of manipulation and control. But
Mm.
it's a part of witchcraft that we don't really talk about. And I think we don't talk about this because we're so busy calling the new ager the witch, instead of thinking about the levels of control that exist in the spaces we frequent every week. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of thinking about how there are people in the world who understand these concepts that they're not teaching believers, like these concepts of energy, I almost have no doubt that what you experienced, Tiff, was a conscious leader, someone who knew how to work energy and took advantage of the energy of the space. It was a charged
Mm.
space. The people did the work, and he knew how to work it.
Mm.
He or she knew how to work it. So it's kind of interesting how that happens, but it reminds me of a dream that I told my sister about a couple of days ago. I had this dream about a week ago, and the dream was just really disheartening. And it was disheartening because of just the sheer, ignorance and lack of consciousness and lack of grace that people who profess Jesus as Lord had. So I won't give all the details of this dream. I'll just give some. So, excuse me. In this dream, I was at a conference that someone dragged me to, and we were in the pavilion. And in that pavilion, there were multiple, preachers coming forth and giving teaching. First few preachers come up, we're all eating while listening to them. They're doing a great job. Then there's this preacher who comes up. She's a Black lady. She's kind of wearing these kind of preacherist garments, like a robe, white. And she has an entourage, and her entourage is following her everywhere she goes. But the first thing that she does is she stands up before people at the pulpit or in the front of the pavilion. And the moment she does that, her energy is so deeply felt. Everyone in that room felt it. But everyone in that room assumed it was the presence of God, but it wasn't. My personhood knew, like my dream self knew this strong energy was there, but refused to decide whether it was God or not. So my dream self said, "Ooh." And I was just observing, I just there watching, kind of like I do all the time in churches, to be honest. I'm the spectator in the church, sorry, but I am. But God teaches me a lot through that spectating. But it was no different in this dream. This lady stood up and she demanded that every single person in that room stand up. And she didn't just demand it, she forced it. So much so that the person standing next to me, who was someone that I love dearly, was still eating her nice little dessert, and she didn't hear or pay attention to this lady's command to stand up. And someone from this lady's entourage came and grabbed her dessert and threw it in the trash. That's the level of control and manipulation that was there. And people just took it in, including this person who was next to me. It happened to her. Her face did not change. Her demeanor did not change. She smiled. She stood up. And I remember my dream self looking at her and saying, "Oh my gosh, this person is so beautiful. Look at her just taking this in. This lady just threw away her dessert rudely, and she's being so humble." And the beauty of the sheer ignorance in the moment looked like genuine beauty, which is really, really weird. But it was also representative of what was happening in this space, because this lady goes around, she prays for people, you know, she prophesies to a couple people, and after about the third person, her and her entourage kind of leaves the pavilion. They go on the side and they start setting fires, and they are determined to set the pavilion on fire with people in it. They give the mic to a light-skinned Black man who is the person who will decide who lives and who dies. It was very much like that. You know, you think of the Holocaust and Dr. Death, or, you know, the person who would sit there and, you know, point in a direction, deciding who lives and who dies. This is what this man was doing. So he would sit there, he would say, you can go. You can go. You can go. It's very emotional. Sorry. So if I shed a few tears. People were filled with such deep fear, but they didn't fight. They didn't try to run out of this place. They were obedient, ignorant, unconscious people who just ceded to these people who were about to blow them up in a pavilion. So um, he points at someone near me. I think he's pointing at me, and I'm like, "Me?" And he's like, "No, her." So he tells that person she can go. Then he points at me. He tells me that I can go, and then gives me a prophetic word. And I'm just like, "Okay," and I leave. Now, the reason why they are going to blow up this pavilion is because this lady who, you know, carried this heavy energy determined that the person who organized the conference was a witch who trains witches. So she decided that everyone who attended, almost everyone who attended this conference, would be members of her, you know, ministry, and would therefore be witches and guilty of death. So she decided that she would kill them off. But this man, she knew that some people would just be invited. And so this man was there to prophetically guess who just simply wasn't guilty of witchcraft. I had seen family, friends in this pavilion who were not pulled out of it. The moment I leave the pavilion and I'm leaving with the person who was called before me, there is this sheer relief that's on everybody's face. In fact, the outside of the pavilion looked like nothing like the inside of the pavilion. People were carefree. They cared nothing about the people in the pavilion. People were doing all types of stuff. These were the so-called righteous ones who weren't guilty of witchcraft. There were two women kissing on a mattress outside the pavilion in front of everybody. There were crowds of people who were cackling, having conversations, introducing themselves to one another, talking about, you know, random things. All of these people knowing what's happening in this pavilion and completely having no disregard or no regard, excuse me. I walk up to someone who is familiar. It's my first time meeting her in person. And this person had no regard for the people on the inside. Her comment was, yeah, I know so and so is in there. They're just going to have to prove their righteousness to get out. So the idea for the people outside of the pavilion, the so-called righteous, they were just people who weren't so-called guilty of witchcraft, but they had no grace. And they could not comprehend the level of witchcraft that was going on in the people, that this lady and her entourage. The true witches, they were the true witches. They were the ones who took the power of life and put it in their own hands and were about to kill a whole bunch of people in a pavilion, and no one cared. This dream was horrible, but it taught me a few things. You know, I always understood witchcraft as having at its root control or manipulation. You know, so I always understood that if you wanted to really think about the true witches and warlocks, you'd be going to spaces that are full of heavy control. You're going to go to your churches or religious spaces. You're going to go to your political spaces. You're going to go to your financial spaces. You're going to look in leadership and you're going to find them. It's just the truth of the matter. But what I didn't understand, well, not that I didn't understand, but what what I rarely thought about, you know, until this dream was how so easily people are swayed by emotion and by energy that they assume that something powerful and strong is the presence of God. And it's not, it's deception. And then in addition to that, I kept thinking about what people believe will happen in the end times or at the end of days, which you'll hear this from me in future conversations. That is a kind of generational, seasonal thing. There are many end times, there are many comings of Christ. Like, and we can talk about this and talk about scripture and how prophecy is revealed time and time and time and time again. It's not a singular fulfillment or a singular act or moment in time. But what people think of when they think of an end is they think of a God who has no grace. But God is grace and will always be that. The people who lose grace, they're the humans. It's the people of God who become graceless. And you look around, don't tell me you haven't seen it. You go to TikTok, you look down your timeline, you go to YouTube, you look at your timeline, you go to Facebook, Instagram, you look on your timeline and you see all of these social media prophets and pastors and people talking about things that they're seeing and experiencing or things that are being revealed to them. And as they speak about them, they speak about them having no grace. The people, the vessels, the spokesmen are graceless. I personally don't understand how a God who is full of grace will have spokesmen who lack grace. But this is often what you see. Everything is you're going to hell. Everything is Jesus is coming back, get it together. And the truth of the matter is yeah, we do got to get it together. But we are in a time of great shifting. This isn't just a time of chaos and you know, damnation. This is also a time of blessing and promotion. And if you can catch that, that will benefit you. Like, and it doesn't mean that you should walk around as someone who is, you know, doing whatsoever your heart desires. It just means that it's very important that we walk in the earth as people who have consciousness, an active consciousness at that. You need to be a thinking person. You need to acknowledge that you are a person who's meant to be a feeling person, and you need to stop and think about what you're experiencing. Think about what you're feeling, and don't assume. Don't assume the dream that you have this one singular meaning. It's more often than not that your dreams have multiple meanings. Don't assume that the dream you have is for the nations when it might very well be for and about you. You know, those kind of things are happening, and they're happening over and over and over. And they're having people speak out, and speak out in ways that don't look like God. Doesn't mean that these are not the people of God. I am in no way, shape, or form suggesting that these social media prophets are false prophets. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not even declaring that they're lying prophets. I'm just seeing that there's a trend of of diminished consciousness when it comes to energy, and when it comes to what to do with what we're seeing, what we're sensing, what we're feeling, and how we're encountering God. And also how we're encountering people. Because remember, you're an energy source, and you're constantly coming in contact with another energy source. Whether it's in person, whether it's through your television or through your phone, or through the music that you listen to, or through the political speeches that you're hearing, you're constantly coming in contact with other energies. And dare I say, whether it's through energies that are embedded in nature, insects carry energy. I like to say I have spider because I am definitely afraid of them, and it can be the utter dark. I will feel something, I will look directly where I feel, and it's a spider. Because insects have energy too. Animals carry energy as well. Items carry energy as well. So we are energized people who are energizing other entities, not just humans. And then you add spirit to that, spirit encounters, people and entities that you can't physically make contact with, that you are constantly also coming in contact with energetically. It's a lot. You know, I used to at some point think that that a lot of people didn't deal with overstimulation. And now I'm at the point where I think we all deal with it. We just don't know it. We're all just extremely sensitive. We're all just constantly, sensing, and we're just not realizing that we are sensing people, that we're consistently sensing, and that these things don't all belong to us. We just claim them for ourselves instead of acknowledging that we're sensing something else. And further, we utilize the earthly things to distract us from the fact that we're ever sensing people. So yeah, we lean over to our families, to the care of children, to our jobs, to exercise, to all the crazy crap that's happening on, on television or in the world, to social media, because it distracts us from the fact that we are sensing people. And at its root is energy. But yeah, that was a long tirade, Tiff. So you have anything else to share?
I if I could say anything, that if anything that I've said would even just ring off to just one person listening, I want to encourage people to be mindful of people. Be mindful of the things that are going around you. Be mindful of the potentials of all the things that can either interject or persuade or influence. Like, be mindful. I think that we as a people, like what your dream told me, is the loss of humanity. Like, nobody cares about human life anymore. And I mean nobody. I'm stretching it. Like, so, and we're selfish. Like, even me as a wife and a mother, I am very selfish. If it ain't about me and mine, anything else don't matter at that point. Especially when something is happening at that time when I have a screaming 2-year-old because she's going through that phase, going through her emotions, Zoe, and she just be screaming her butt off. And then I have my son, always full of energy, jumping off of walls. And then I woke up feeling my neighbors, and then my husband's like, and it's like I have to go to work and I have all this stuff I'm dealing with. And then it's kind of like I immediately reject everything else that I feel because up until the point before I got to that space, I was full of everything that was going on around me. So it's very easy to lose track of what's really going on. It's very easy to probably spread a whole bunch of unnecessary negative, even all the way down to the thought patterns. Like it's very easy to be overwhelmed because we're just full of things. And I think it's very important that we are mindful and that we get to a place of grounding ourselves, and we don't have to do what people tell us what to do to ground ourselves. We don't have to be controlled by people. Some people feel grounded when they're near water. Some people feel grounded when they take their shoes off and walk the earth. Some people feel grounded when they're reading a book. Some people feel grounded when they're in the air. Some people feel grounded when they're swinging. I'm one of those people. I love swinging. Some people feel grounded when they're driving their vehicles, also me. Some people feel grounded when they're talking to other people, a person where they feel they're in a safe space, which is me and my sister's relationship, or I feel more grounded when I'm talking to her. Other people have different ways of grounding themselves, but it's very important that we do it because with all this energy that we're feeling, all the energy that's all around us, all the insect energies, because we got a lot of bugs in this earth. And based off of where you live in the South, it's a lot of bugs. You know what I'm saying? So imagine all the energy you feeling. You thinking that you had a bad day. It's this dang on evil little spider trying to get you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm just saying. I'm trying to make this more lighthearted, but because if you're mindful of every little thing, you get paranoid. You got to have a balance, but don't claim things as your own. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it's good, it's bad, it's God, it's the devil. It could be anything. You have to That's why it's good to journal. That's why it's good to talk things out. That's why it's good to have that quiet time away from everything so that you don't influence people or influence your environment or influence your children or influence anybody that you come into contact with the things that you picked up and you don't even know the source.
This
It's
kind of
very
makes me,
important.
sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt. This kind of reminds me of that Doctor Who or a few Doctor Who episodes when he comes in contact with nuclear energy, how he shakes it
Mm-hmm.
out and it comes through his feet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like this kind of conversation can get really super doom and gloomy really fast.
Yeah.
But it only gets that way if you refuse to acknowledge your power.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of people participating in witchcraft by utilizing your power in a church, that can get really depressing. But the truth of the matter is you've been looking at these leaders, some of them, not all of them. There are many beautiful pastors out there with amazing hearts. But you've been looking at a lot of these leaders and you've been like, oh my gosh, look how powerful this person is. And those who know what to do with energy have been using your power. So you need to walk around thinking, look how powerful I am.
I am.
Look at how powerful God has allowed me to be. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it's your power, it's your energy. And you mentioned this earlier, being able to walk in a space and change an atmosphere or bring God to a space. Yes, we can bring God to spaces, but we can also shift, the emotional energy or the charges in a space. You can bring healing to a space full of sickness and disease. You can bring freedom to a space full of bondage. You can do that
Mm-hmm.
if you know your power. So I think in all of this, it's just important for, like you said, balance. You don't want to be the person who is so full of power that you're ignoring the importance of community and you're so self-absorbed as a result of it. You don't want to be the person who does not know that you have power either. You don't want to be the person who is avoiding church, because there are some churches with people who, are siphoning power and energy. But you also don't want to be the person who is ignorantly going to church assuming that the leaders have your best interests at heart, and assuming that the presence of God is active and present in that space. There's a balance to it all. Yes, this is a very serious conversation, but it's also one that should leave you feeling powerful, because, you know, this isn't reserved to the people who are conscious. This is an opportunity for you to gain insight and for you to come into consciousness, and for
Knowing
you to learn
yourself.
how to work your own power with God, of
Yeah.
course. But
I
yeah.
feel like one of the biggest problems that people have in church, the reason why I don't think it's always like an ignorance of knowing what's God-like and what's not God-like, because you learn that. You can learn that through fruit. But I feel like the biggest ignorance is the one of not knowing yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know myself. I don't know my power. I don't know what I do. What is my purpose? Like if you talk to somebody that's really depressed, even somebody that may be suicidal, the main thing that you will hear them come out of their mouth is, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of me living? They think that whatever bad situation happened in their life, they're like, oh, I'm done for it because I didn't invested all that in that and it failed. So I have no purpose here. In reality, it's just you just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
And I think that this life on earth is not just learning more about God, is learning more about ourselves and sharing it with the world.
Yeah. Socrates, I'm always going to take it to education. Socrates, know thyself, right? Like that becomes really important. But also, you're not praying and worshiping and doing all this God work for God.
Hmm.
You're doing
You're
it for
doing it for
you.
people
Your
and for
pursuit
people. Yeah.
of God reveals you.
Mm.
God reveals God's self to you often with and by revealing you to you.
Mm.
And if
It goes
you
back
are
to that scripture too.
unable to encounter you in your
Mm.
exploration of God, you have to stop and ask questions.
Oh, yes. I agree.
And you have
I
to
agree.
ask that bigger question of, have I really been relating to God? If God is not revealing you to you, there's a problem. And I think this
Indeed.
also like really emphasizes how personal our relationships are to God. The encounters that I have, how I see and feel and experience the world, that is going to be, in one way or another, unique to me. It doesn't mean that my sister and others aren't having these encounters. There are just going to be some things that I'm experiencing in ways that I'm seeing the world and taking in these encounters that they aren't. They may have the same encounter, but they're taking it in differently. They're experiencing, thinking through it, processing it differently. It might take me 2 years before I ever tell anybody about anything that I see. And some people are telling you the moment they wake up or the moment they have the experience.
Mm.
Like everyone processes things differently. Everyone encounters God differently. It truly is a personal walk. And a huge aspect of that is because you're important in it. You're not praying for the sake of God. You're praying for the sake of you. You need to hear what you're saying when you pray.
Oh,
A
yes.
lot of times we
Yeah.
figure out our needs and wants because we have this vulnerable moment with God. We actually declare it out of our mouths when we are intentional about prayer. And
True.
sometimes we don't do that work because of the distractions of life. And prayer is the
Mm.
only time we get to have those moments of vulnerability.
That's true.
So,
That's true. If I ever go to God and I am venting because I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I'm just like, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't get no feedback about myself, I know that I know that the prayer is not done. Because eventually, when you get to that place with God where you're in a place of intimacy, you're going to get something in return. You're going to get an exchange. There's always an exchange. And if there is not an exchange, then you didn't get there. You didn't get to where you're supposed to be. The goal of prayer has not been met, and I believe that in today's society, I think that we miss the mark when we tell people that their walk with God is wrong, or the way that their pursuit of God or whatever is false because it's different from the next person.
Yeah.
What makes us so? I just watched a video the other day. Side note, there was a video of they connected some device to the womb, and what they did was it showed the direct time, the exact time that the sperm hit the egg, and a light, it went, and it was this light source. So you literally can see life enter immediately as soon as, it was contact. And I thought that amazed me because it kind of rebuttals all those arguments about conception, first off. And second off, it just confirms the energy that is created, like the life source energy that is created with one person.
Yeah.
Well, you're not more important than the next person. Another person is not more important than you. We all have this purpose, and it's great, and it's not all the same. It's not the same. So we need to get out of this box of thinking that things have to be a certain way in order for it to be God, because that is the misconception, and we're missing God. We're missing God because of it. And it's causing confusion in the
Yeah.
church, and it's causing confusion in the world. And we're not supposed to be people that just spread confusion throughout it. We're supposed to be spreading life wherever we go.
We're also missing ourselves when we do that because, the pursuit of the self is not one that is done by yourself. It is one that it's a communal practice. Yeah, you do some personal work, but it's the people around you who help you come into being, or who should be helping you come into being. There are people around us who just don't need to be around us. Some of us have not found the tribe that's meant to help us grow and develop. By the way, if you feel that way, we're creating an amazing tribe in prophetic culture. It's a private group. So I'll include the link. I should have included here in this video, but I will include it. And you can also go to my past videos and find it. Click on the invite and join the community. It's meant to be a safe space where we can all speak and voice our concerns and voice what we're feeling and experiencing in God, but we can also come together as community to build one another up. So that's the idea there. But yeah, a lot of us really misunderstand the need for community. And we think, especially prophetic people, we think that because we have these moments where we feel alone, that our lives are supposed to be in eternal wildernesses. And that's not true. You're not growing in solitude. That's not really what's happening, you know. You might not have people, not everyone around you might not completely understand who you are and how you operate. They might not have a sensitivity to the things that you have a sensitivity concerning, but you're learning in those communities. And you might not feel like you are actively growing in those communities, but you got to change your perspective. The learnings grow you, and once again, a lot of times it's also just that we haven't found our tribe. So just another plug there, like you're going to miss you if you miss out on community.
Yeah. As the people of God quote, don't forsake the assembling of yourself.
Yeah.
Fellowship is important.
Fellowship is very important, and it doesn't just happen in places called church.
No, it doesn't.
Actually, you ask me, in a lot of churches, it's not really happening at all.
Nope. It's not. It's sad to say, but it's not going to be like that always, because I feel I feel a shift happening. It's been happening for a while now, but as all this stuff starts unfolding in the earth, it's like people are starting to wake up and starting to realize things. And I think that's why we're more sensitive to things more than we were in the past, because people are breaking off barriers. Those walls are coming down and they're embracing themselves, and they're like, I don't care what you think. And in a way, it's like the youth coming in too. Like they're like, I don't care what you think. I'm gonna protest. You got young people protesting. Young people. I don't know if y'all even know what's going on in Africa right now. The young people are speaking up of the unjust things that's going on in the government, you know? And it's like it's just a great thing happening where people are starting to finally wake up and be relentless about their lives. So, I would encourage everybody to just be more open and more ready to receive like truths about yourself and be able to walk in that. And there's no requirement. We all reach God in different ways and we all do things in a different way. Don't try to be like the next person. Don't try to have what the other person have. Yeah, I felt things through my feet. Somebody else may never feel things through their feet. Somebody may never dream like my sister dreams. Somebody may never be able to speak in tongues and do all those things that the church says that it's a requirement. Look, it's all about you and your relationship with God and your growth in God, and whatever God gives you, that's yours and nobody can take it away and nobody can imitate it.
Yeah.
You got your own superpower. I tell my son all the time. I tell him he has superpowers. I'm like, you have superpowers, and you're gonna be super, and you're gonna make a difference in this world. We all have superpowers, and we just have to. They have to unfold. But until they do, be confident in who you are, and be willing to take that step forward to find out and figure out who you are and what your purpose is in this earth.
Yeah, and spend some time just stopping to breathe. Just stop
Mm-hmm.
and take a moment to feel. You're a feeling person. Stop and force yourself to be a feeling person. If it's just for 5 minutes at first, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And dedicate some time to doing that and growing the amount of time you spend being a person who is contemplative. This is one of the things the church lacks today. When, these moments of enlightenment were occurring in history, there have always been spaces for people to contemplate, and contemplation was always something that was important. It wasn't just simply the following of laws, it was being in community and being able to engage in active conversation, engage in those real good spiritual arguments or religious arguments or political arguments, or like the Greeks drinking and having ridiculous conversations, whatever it was. But there were these moments for people to contemplate personally and in community. And nowadays, we're just like mindless drones. We let other people think for us. We let other people feel for us. We let other people tell us who God is without us actually having any bit of active intention in pursuing God for ourselves. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't stop to think. So stop, choose to sit and think and sit in yourself and figure out what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge it out of your mouth, put it on paper, do what you must, and then get back to your life. But take those breathers daily. Schedule them if you must.
Have a namaste moment. Namaste.
Yeah, have a namaste moment. But this has been great. As mentioned earlier in this live, my sister and I are going to try to come live more often. We're going to try to do some YouTube stuff as well. So you're welcome to follow us on this journey of just vulnerability and just effective dialogue. And we'd like you to join us on those dialogues. Your voice is just as important. So we want to hear your voice as well. And we'll be bringing on other people to have these really candid conversations about any and everything as well. So thank you for joining. If you're
Hi
watching
guys.
this replay, so sorry for all the technical difficulties. It will get
We'll do better next time. We're learning, okay? We're learning.
Yes, Mr. Clarence. Deconstruction is so important. Mr. Clarence said, I'm going through a deconstructing. Yes, it is so important.
Oh yes.
And I've been deconstructing for many years now, over a decade, really. My
Hmm.
sister's been deconstructing. So we're going to talk more about that journey as well, because it is not for the faint of heart. You end up
No, it's not.
questioning every part of your personhood and going to God like, Lord, what are you doing here?
What is this? What?
Like, everything I believed about you is a false.
Oh my gosh.
It's so hard, but it's definitely something that you want to do in a community as well. You want to spend some time alone deconstructing, but you want to be able to have conversations with people who are going to help you along the journey, not tell you how to think, but to, in some ways, help you process as they process life and God and everything in between. So,
Learn from each other, grow with each other.
yes,
We're like those trees, remember? Trees.
yes, exactly. Exactly. But we love you guys. See you on the next live.
Bye.
Bye.